More than 3,500 medals of honor have been awarded for action above and beyond the call of duty since the Civil War. All the recipients have been men, except one. Mary Edwards Walker was born in November 1832 in Oswego, New York, a small town on the banks of Lake Ontario. She was the fifth of 6 surviving children and the youngest of 5 daughters. Her father, Alva, and his wife, Vesta, were progressive parents whose influence would guide Mary for the rest of her life. They were abolitionists who promoted free thinking, equality in education, and dress reform for women. In the 1840s, traditional women's clothing featured tight-fitting corsets and heavy layered skirts. Mary's parents believed these restrictive garments damaged women's health, so they encouraged Mary to wear loose-fitting clothing. She often wore raised skirts with trousers underneath. But this unusual style of dress provoked anger in some, and she was mocked and attacked. But Mary had spirit and will, much larger than her petite stature, and she was undeterred.
The time is coming when every woman will dress in this style, for the advantages are too evident to be much longer overlooked.
A keen student, Mary pored over medical books in her father's library, which sparked a dream to become a physician. After working for a time as a schoolteacher, Mary was accepted to medical school in 1853 at Syracuse Medical College, one of the only medical schools to allow women. On February 20, 1855, Mary Walker graduated with honors and became the second woman in the United States to receive a medical degree. 9 months later, in an unconventional wedding ceremony, Walker married Albert Miller, a fellow physician she met in medical school. Walker wore a short skirt and trousers instead of a traditional wedding dress, and refused to use the word obey in her vows. She also defied tradition and retained her maiden name in her work as a physician. The couple opened separate medical practices in the same building, but Walker's practice and their marriage lasted only 4 years after she discovered Miller was not committed to her or their marriage. In 1859, in a highly unusual move, she sued Miller for divorce. It took 10 years until she was finally granted the freedom she so desperately wanted.
Without proper divorce laws, virtue is robbed of her rights, vice is encouraged, noble aspirations rushed, love turned to hate, and marriage made wretched beyond the power of human expression. If it is right to be legally married, it is right to be legally divorced.
As a fervent abolitionist, Dr. Walker made the decision to leave her private medical practice in New York, move to Washington, D.C., and request a commission as a medical officer in the Federal Army. Though the military welcomed volunteer male physicians, her request was summarily denied. She was a woman, she was a doctor, and she wore trousers. But Walker was a determined patriot, so she served as an unpaid surgeon at a makeshift infirmary called Indiana Hospital, set up in the unfinished U.S. Patent Building in Washington, D.C. Head surgeon Dr. James Green welcomed the help. Though Green requested that Walker be compensated, Surgeon General Clement A. Finley refused. Walker was so committed to helping injured soldiers, she continued to work without pay. Additional doctors arrived at Indiana Hospital, but Walker disagreed with some of their more extreme medical practices. She thought many of the amputations were unnecessary because unsanitary conditions caused infection which resulted in death. She quietly counseled soldiers against the surgery when she thought it was appropriate.
Many a man today has for it the perfect and good use of his limbs, who would not have had but for my advice.
Walker worked in Washington without pay for 2 years, though she had waged a relentless campaign requesting an official post. Because she had no specific assignment, she moved to Virginia in the fall of 1862, where the fighting was bloody and intense. Her presence wasn't always welcomed. At one point, she designed her own blue uniform with a green sash. the sign of a battlefield physician. In 1863, after years of voluntary service to her country, Dr. Mary Walker's medical credentials were finally accepted, and she was formally named as the only female acting assistant surgeon in the United States Army during the Civil War. She was assigned to the 52nd Ohio Volunteers and paid $80 a month. Walker was proud she had persevered and finally accomplished her goal.
I let my curls grow while I was in the Army, so that everybody would know that I was a woman.
Walker treated the wounded at the battles of Bull Run, Chickamauga, Chattanooga, and Fredericksburg. Her commitment to administer to patients knew no boundaries, and she bravely crossed Confederate lines to treat wounded civilians and Confederate soldiers. But her services as a physician weren't the only activities in which Walker was engaged. She used her gender and role as a doctor as cover to spy for the Union. But on April 10, 1864, Walker's luck ran out when she was captured by Confederate soldiers and taken to Castle Thunder Prison in Richmond, Virginia.
The peas were always wormy. The rice was sometimes good, but generally was musty or contained vermin. The bacon in several instances was so rotten that its odor was unendurable to me after it was served, and would but just hold together. But it was never so bad but that I always found someone who would gladly accept my ration.
The prison's filthy conditions and poor nutrition took its toll on Walker's health. After 4 months of being held at Castle Thunder, she was released in exchange for a Confederate surgeon from Tennessee. Though she provided medical care in the Army for another 10 months, the lingering effects of her captivity prevented Walker from continuing her career as a surgeon. On June 15, 1865, Walker requested release from military service. For the first time, the Army quickly gave Walker the answer she was looking for. Walker's hardship, sacrifice, loyalty, and patriotism did not go unnoticed. On November 11, 1865, President Andrew Johnson approved Dr. Mary Walker to receive the Medal of Honor. She was the first woman granted this recognition. After the Civil War ended, Walker lectured on dress reform and women's voting rights throughout the United States, England, and France. Leaders of the American suffrage movement didn't welcome her involvement because she believed a constitutional amendment wasn't necessary to guarantee women the right to vote. Walker thought they already had the right because they were citizens of the United States.
Men of America, the best and most appreciative of you, will see new charms in women, or at least you will have an added respect for women generally when the power of the ballot is in their hands.
Walker continued to advocate for women and was successful in obtaining a pension for all Civil War nurses. Her good works, however, didn't stop the mocking and attacks from men, the press, and the police.
I have never seen the day when it was not a trial to me to appear in public in a reform dress. Every jeer has cut me to the quick. Many times have I gone to my room and wept after being publicly derided. No one knows or will ever know what it has cost me to live up to my principles, to be consistent with my convictions and declarations, but I have done it and am not sorry for it.
In 1917, the qualifications to receive the Medal of Honor were changed. So the first woman to ever receive the medal had it rescinded, along with 910 men. Undeterred, Walker refused to return the medal and proudly wore it for the rest of her life.
I remember when I could get anything I wanted in this city or any other city in the Union. Doors opened to me everywhere. Presidents and cabinet ministers and great generals were glad to meet and listen to me. I was younger then, and I worked for our soldier boys, just as so many girls and young women are working in the Red Cross for our boys who are over there. But now I am alone, with the infirmities of age fast weighing me down and practically penniless, and no one wants to be bothered with me. But it is the same story and the same experiences that have come to others. And why should I complain?
Dr. Walker died at her home in Oswego, New York in February of 1919 at the age of 86. 18 months later, the 19th Amendment was ratified, granting women the right to vote. In 1977, the Army Board for the Correction of Military Records recommended Walker's medal should be reinstated, citing her distinguished gallantry, self-sacrifice, patriotism, dedication, and unflinching loyalty to her country, despite the apparent discrimination because of her sex. On June 10, 1977, President Jimmy Carter restored the award. Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, an audacious and outspoken champion of women's rights, remains the only female recipient of the Medal of Honor.